meeting's being recorded. It has started. And Trent, for the purposes of roll call, I was going to make this announcement later, but we have a new tree board member, Alex Chacon.
Welcome. Okay, let's call this meeting to order. Monday, December 9th, 2024, of the Tumwater Tree Board. Let's just go through who's all here. Do you want to start, Cody?
Mike Jackson,
Trent Grantham?
Chacon, Jim Sedor,
Tanya's on virtual.
Yep.
Nice. All right. So that's everybody, right?
Yeah, I have a cold, so sorry, guys. That's why I'm not there. I didn't want to share with everybody, and I know
Brent.
you appreciate it.
Brent is missing.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right. Brent is
I
excused.
hope you feel better.
That's right. Brent Chapman, absent. Okay. Any changes to the agenda tonight?
For me.
Do we want to give Alex a chance to introduce himself, and, or is that on there later?
It's not on there, but sure, yes. I was going to introduce during my remarks,
okay.
but we can do it now. And here's Brent.
Oh,
So,
that's me. Okay, we all are here now.
Missed roll call?
Missed roll call. Okay, no changes to the agenda. Approval of minutes from July 8th, 2024. Is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes? Has everybody read through the meeting minutes?
So moved. Second.
Seconded by Brody. All those in favor of approving the meeting minutes from July 8th, 2024 of the Tumwater Tree Board, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The meeting minutes are approved. Okay, Tree Board member reports.
I will come later with my coordinator's report, but I wanted to announce that we have a new tree board member, Alex Chacon, and I'll give Alex an opportunity to introduce himself.
Yeah, so my name is Alex Chacon. I'm a resident of the city of Tumwater as of this year. I'm working as the stewardship forester for a Thurston Conservation District. I got linked to the tree board by Alyssa Jones-Woods in my work with Conservation District. I'm an ISA certified arborist. I've been doing this public sector forestry for 4 years now, and I have a background in plant sciences from the University of California, Santa Cruz, and I spent 4 years working as a consulting utility arborist before I started doing working with conservation districts.
Okay, welcome.
That's me.
Welcome.
You don't want to introduce yourself to Alex as well?
Sure, go ahead, Jim. We'll start with you.
Jim Sedor, lived here 50 years, worked for the Department of Natural Resources for 35. As the forest nursery manager, started the greenhouse operation there. And as a safety and health director for 8 years. Interest to reforestation, native plants. I have a background, master's in science also, from the University of Idaho.
Welcome, Alex. I'm Brent Chapman. This is my second stint on the tree board. I kind of boomeranged back after some time away. Good to be back. I'm the horticulturalist for the State Capitol campus in Olympia. So we're enjoying being a newly accredited arboretum, and we're increasing our generic tree diversity every year, getting some oddball genera that you don't normally see in Olympia, but fun to get them.
Is that the Capitol?
Mhm.
Gotcha.
Hi, I'm Trent Grantham. I'm a landscape architect. I live in Tumwater, obviously, but work in Lacey, but I've been on the tree board, I wanna say it's like almost 10 years.
Mike Jackson, we've met.
Pass.
Yeah, the business, professional forestry services, and, been at it for over 50 years here in Tumwater. And, good to have you aboard.
You were an original member of the tree board, right?
Yeah,
Cool.
initial when it started.
Yeah, Alex, I'm Brody Koval. Work for the Department of Natural Resources for my day job. I've been an arborist and a forester, there. I most recently transitioned into policy work, so I'm the statewide recreation policy manager at DNR. I'm also a small business owner in Tumwater, and operate South Sound Wood. We do local, urban wood salvage and furniture design build from locally sourced salvage wood material. Meet you.
And Tanya is in Zoom land.
I'm in Zoom land because I'm sick. Sorry, guys. I didn't want to share my cold with you. Tanya Nozawa, this is my second stint at the tree board. I've been going on 8 years. I've worked for the state for 37. I'm the citizen member because I love trees and I'm just interested in saving and learning as much as I can.
Nice to meet you.
Tree board member reports?
What?
Any other tree board member reports?
Oh, no.
Nope, nothing from anybody else? Okay. Coordinators report.
Yes, I have a couple things, and after I share a couple things, then I'm going to pass it to Brad to share a couple things as well. The city budget was approved, and inside that included the formal approval of an urban forester full-time position that we will start recruiting for here very shortly. Also included is money for study materials and testing for 3 staff members in utilities to become ISA arborist certified, as well as Chase, who is here with us from Parks today. There was also, I think, money set aside for him to pursue ISA accreditation. There was also some money for deferred maintenance of our urban and community forests on city-owned properties, a result of that inventory maintenance plan. Not as much as we needed, but in terms of what it defined for the number of years, but some significant money to help with the deferred maintenance. I'm going to share some pictures here. Hopefully, okay. We held and for whatever reason it wants me to crop this, sure, why not? We held a tree pruning workshop with the help of M. Roberts from DNR. She provided the workshop for free to city employees. We had about 25 in attendance from Parks, from utilities, Parks and Utilities, and we had hands-on training. It was about a 6-hour training at Pioneer Park. I've received good feedback, and I think this picture was in the newsletter from DNR today. So
Everybody's looking great, safe.
yes,
Yeah.
we went over safety quite a bit, and that was very helpful for our staff. So that was one of the items from the Urban Forestry Management Plan, is to have the tree pruning workshop. So we've done that for now, and of course, it's a cyclical thing, so we'll do it again. But we had good participation, and Chase, who's on the call today, was one of those participants. And then I will pass it to Brad because he has some updates, including another person who's sitting in this room.
You'll have to identify that other person. I'd like to introduce, first of all, our newest member of the Long Range Planning Group, Dana Bowers, who comes from Thurston County. You may recognize her from other tree-related activities. We're very happy to have her join us. She started actually at the beginning of the month, and she hasn't left us yet, so we're... what that means for us is it means we actually are fully staffed for the first time in a long time. So, another thing I would like to share with you is tomorrow night, the City Council and the Planning Commission are going to be having a joint work session to go over our work program for next year. The draft work program is in their packet if you'd like to take a closer look at it. The big news is we are officially behind on our comprehensive plan update process, which is by far our biggest work item. That and the development code related, things related, that is about half of our total budget for staff. We had included time to do the urban forestry amendments in 25. Unfortunately, I was able to have a meeting with our city administrator, who added about 7 different projects to the list, all of which unfortunately have pushed back the urban forestry, which is okay in a way because we have a lot of groundwork to get done in terms of policy for the conservation element, which I think would be appropriate to bring to you for discussion this year. Melissa, as you probably know, has been working on the climate element. So there are a lot of policy-related documents as well as implementation actions that are part of those documents that I think are worthy of conversation about. But we're not going to be able to devote staff time to managing and finishing up the project that we started in 2022 until 2026. So I'm
Clarify exactly what the, are you talking about the landscape ordinance upgrade?
Landscape
Yeah,
ordinance.
so for those of you who weren't here in 2022 or 23, we had gotten we had taken on and had consultant assistance in preparing 3 sets of amendments to our ordinances. The first one dealt with tree preservation in 1608. And then we had one dealing with street trees, Title 12, and then we also had our landscaping ordinance in 1847. We had reached the point where we had internal drafts of all the ordinances ready to go. When at that point, we made the mistake of looking at the wildland urban interface codes that were going to become under adoption. Once we looked at that and realized there were some huge, gigantic, painful conflicts between what we were proposing and that, we switched our efforts to successfully, we're gonna have to fight this battle again, but successfully delaying the implementation of that and more importantly, getting better mapping. So we actually can use it on the local level. That was a statewide effort. It wasn't just us that was concerned with that. Pardon me. So our intent was to bring back all of those things once we had staff on board. But unfortunately, it looks like in 25, we're really slack. Even with Dana agreeing to come back next week. He hasn't signed anything yet, so don't push her.
Don't scare her.
But the consultants met their contractual obligations.
Have given us everything. It's really up to us now to sort of take it internally through the process. One of the things I think we identified as we were going through it on the staff level is the tree preservation code, as we had put it together, was exceptionally complex. We had sort of taken it to the next level. What we didn't do is perhaps make it understandable to anybody except us, which is a very important point for us in trying to make sure things are written in plain language that are easily understood and so forth. So we recognize there's a bit more work, especially on the tree preservation code, to go forward. I think we can move forward with bits and pieces of things like the adopted street tree lists, those kinds of things, which I think have a practical impact in terms of upcoming development. But the rest of it is going to have to wait until we have the time to really.
Regarding development of the WUI, where is that coming from? Who's proposing?
Well, no, the state of Washington, actually, the state legislature adopted the Wineland Urban Interface as part of the set of building codes. As part of the RCW that adopted it, they only, this is kind of strange. For every other building code, they adopted the whole thing. Whatever the IBC says, it's in place and was subject to state tweaking to it. With the Wineland Urban Interface Code, they only adopted specific portions of it, dealing with protection of structures and also some things dealing with other things related to that. The State Building Code Council sort of took it in a different direction and said, we're adopting the whole thing with some state amendments. But most importantly, it's back with DNR right now to redo the mapping. Most importantly, do the criteria for how the mapping should be done, what should be incorporated, fire history, vegetation, what part of the state we're in, those kinds of things it was left out of the previous iteration of the mapping.
So it's going to be DNR that develops that map of the WUI.
Yeah, so the DNR's responsibility is only the map, not anything else.
Yeah.
That's important.
My coordinator comments, or coordinator's report.
Oh, Dana, would you like to actually talk a little bit about your background to those folks besides Mike who don't know who you are?
Well, I've had the pleasure of meeting Brent as well. I planted a tree with him at the Capitol campus. Thank you, sir.
Or
And-
13,
Pardon?
or 13 is the case may have been.
Well, I only got the plan once. I only have 2 hands. And then I also have worked with Alex Chacon at the Conservation District. So really glad to meet you and glad to continue to work with the rest of you as you participate with Tumwater. But my recent background is with Thurston County, and I led the process for adopting the Forest Land Conversion Code at the county. So they had been looking at it since 2009, and we're trying to figure out what to do to protect trees at the county level upon development. And so then 2 years ago, when I stepped into the position, I had some forestry background, forestry education and communication background. They wanted me to carry that through, and we were successful. And right now, the county's in a process to adaptively manage that implementation. So that's where they're at. And I bring that to this project, and hopefully we'll be working on that with Alyssa to carry it forward and get it adopted. Yeah. And then before then, I have been working in community education and outreach roles, and so I bring that plain talk principle that Brett's talking about into my work, and make sure that the codes that we're writing and also the aligning documentation for the public is something that they can digest, because who can abide by rules they can't understand. So we just want to be diligent about that. It is a state mandate, and so we want to make sure we're even above and going forward with that, where some of our codes aren't necessarily, when we're adopting and putting new codes in place, making sure they are. Thank you for your warm welcome.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? We've all kind of expressed the disappointment, of course, that we weren't able to meet our planned timeline. I think we all recognize the need for change in the code. And it's my understanding that all proposed development and approved developments, of course, are subject to the existing code. So even though we recognize we want development to change, we can't do that until we change the code. Is that legally, that's the problem we're facing, right?
And I think the other thing to keep in mind is when we need to also bring the code back to our stakeholders. You recall, we had a very large group of stakeholders, from people very concerned with preserving trees as is, all the way to how do we make development work along with everything else. And so I think we need to have that opportunity to, again, when we bring it back, is to bring it back to that full stakeholder group and work through that. That, I think, only strengthens what comes out of the result. Goes back to you and the planning commission for recommendation, and then so
Our challenge, of course, that every day we delay is another approved development that doesn't meet the standards that we would like to have set. And I assume there's nothing that can be done to try to up the standards, subject to the approval of changes in the ordinances.
yeah, I think unfortunately, we're faced with a whole slew of things. There's no shortage of issues that we need to deal with that we know are truly problems. And it becomes really sort of a pick and choose, what can we really address? And for us, coming year, we have a state mandated changes that we're tying our hands in terms of what we need to do. And there are also, again, competing interests within the city and all of its residents about what should have priority and how we should deal with those things. And unfortunately, we have to make these kinds of choices. So I don't have I can't tell you this is all gonna be better for the next year or so. I do think, pardon me, our permit staff is good with working with the developers to do those kind of the things that we kind of want to accomplish formally through the code, and have those conversations at the initial stages of development review to see what we can get before we can actually require it.
And I know in 2022, 23, we had funds to hire a consultant to do a lot of work for us. And the workload is such that current staff can't do everything we'd like to have done. I'm assuming that there's not budget to, again, hire a consultant to do some of the work that staff can't get to.
I believe, and I apologize, it's been 40 months since I looked at this, but I believe we had allocated funding in the biennium, probably 25, 26, towards additional consultant help to help us wrap it up. And we built in an estimate of the number of hours that we would need for that. So we wouldn't be committing necessarily the level of funds we were initially, because we don't need that at the moment. We just need a little bit of expertise for a little bit of time versus the full range that we had before. So I think we're actually okay with that. We were talking about setting up and extending contracts at the beginning of this coming year under that assumption. So that still holds true as part of this current budget for 25, 26.
Brad, can you speak to the possibility of the permit reviewers in terms of exemptions and variances? I forget the gentleman's name that gave us a good initial balance on all that in the code. And so I'm still a little fuzzy on the difference between a variance and exemption, and we don't need to get into that. But it seems like there's some capacity for the permit reviewers to use our current codes and standards, but grant fewer exemptions and or variances, whichever ones are within the current code. Can you speak to that possibility?
Yeah. So I think the issue with our current code is, to be honest, the exemptions are really things that should have been not exemptions to begin with. They should have been permitted outright, and that we're dealing with a code situation that creates I think a false sense that we're varying from overall protections by doing a particular route. So I think the presentation that Alex gave to you, was it late last year or the year before?
August, maybe?
Late last year. Is really in line with why we're trying to go in and fix the code in the first place, is to address that in a formal way. So we're not left with using terms like exceptions and variances when they truly, in order for something to actually be built, sometimes it just has to happen in terms of the code. So we're not dealing with something that goes outside of the code in terms of what we're approving. It's a matter of just exercising those elements that are within the code right now to allow us to have development in the first place. If we didn't, we would be denying people on grounds that I'm sure they would be more than happy to come back at us and challenge us legally on. Again, I'm not making anybody happy tonight.
At least you let this have the happy news about hiring an urban forester.
I lost the coin flip. You got to introduce new people,
You introduced a new person.
talk about the urban forester coming on board.
So will that person be leading this group going forward, or have?
No, so it'll still be, me, but they will be my alternate, so I can take vacation on a second Monday if I want to. So you'll have, and also they will be helpful, in translating things that I don't necessarily understand. We'll have the subject matter expertise. I will likely request a tree board member to be on the hiring panel for interviews. Whoever wants to volunteer, I normally just defer to the chair, but if the chair wants to encourage others, it's open. I'm leaving one seat on the interview panel for a tree board member. Yeah, so we'll have some in-house expertise. We have some additional now, but then we'll have a designated urban forester that will be reviewing those permits, those applications, be helping implement the urban forestry management plan with a lot more expertise than I was able to bring to the table. But we'll both be with you for the tree board.
And that person will ultimately be leading these code changes when we get to them.
Likely that community development will still lead that, but they will be heavily involved.
We will be using their services.
I'm the urban forester. I recall us providing feedback on the position description or job announcement. Is that finalized now, or?
It's at HR right now, but they did review the version that incorporated your suggested changes. I can email its current version. It's not been posted yet, so there's still.
What's the timeline on it being posted?
I'm waiting to hear.
Okay, gotcha.
It won't be 100% urban forestry. I know at one point we talked about a shared with, I can't remember the term, sustainability.
Nope, we're not redoing what we did with me. They are fully dedicated to urban forestry, and they will be skilled. I'm not skilled in urban forestry. I want to make sure that we have someone who understands.
That's great.
the leading.
That's 100% focus on.
Yeah.
Yes, and I will supervise them, so however that works.
There'll be some water quality pieces to the work.
Part of their salary is funded from stormwater, so I believe it's 50% of the total salary and benefits are paid for by the River Network grant, which is from the U.S. Forest Service. The other 50% is split 50% general fund and 50% stormwater, because we did develop that nexus with the urban forestry inventory and maintenance plan to provide another funding source to help support that, and the deferred maintenance and the ISA arborist classes and tests, those are also funded with the stormwater. So that's the first time in our budget that urban forestry has been supported with stormwater funds, which is a win in itself as well.
Because the code revision work is being punted, does that free up capacity for the urban forester to focus on other things? And if so, what things?
So I have like their 6-month onboarding right now, just to get them familiar with urban forestry management plan, to get them introduced to you, to get them onboarded in the permitting system, and familiar with, because they'll be essentially they will be able to be loaned from my department to others, Parks Department, community development. They'll be spending at least 20% of their time reviewing permit applications. Forgot your question already. Can you repeat it?
What are you filling the void in their time with?
Urban forestry management plan implementation,
Okay.
likely, other things in the plan. I'm leaving it, in the packet today, there was a list of the items that are scheduled to happen in 2025. I am leaving it open to them, what order in which they think that those actions should be done. There's probably an order of operations, in which case one would be helpful for the other. Their main focus will be implementing the urban forestry management plan and developing those incentive programs that are associated with the River Network grant. So by 2026, we'll have that tree giveaway program where we'll be able to identify where on the property and approve it and make sure that it's the right tree, right place, and provide them the other materials. They'll be working on developing those other incentives, the one for tree assessments, and also a street tree trimming program for income limited residents that have street trees on their property that have deferred maintenance. So they'll be developing all that, implementing the urban forestry management plan, and helping with our needs at the permit counter, essentially, related to urban forestry.
What are some of the deliverables for the U.S. Forest Service grant?
Those hiring the urban forester. We'll be deploying before the end of this year heat sensors throughout the community. We've already installed one at Bush Middle School. I'm waiting for approval from our streets crew to attach them to street trees and Brody's neighbor's fence to start gathering data on urban heat and relative humidity. So that's another, keeping data on that. Then developing those 3 incentive programs. So the tree giveaway, the trimming, and the assessments, the free assessments. And then there's the urban forestry management plan, which is like 400 actions.
What are the free assessments again?
So that'll launch in like 26, 27, for income qualified residents that are in the disadvantaged communities map area of the city as defined by the EPA. They will be able to ask the urban forester to come do a risk assessment of their tree. So hopefully, it's intended to hopefully keep people, help people trust their trees, to retain their trees, as opposed to out of fear, just cutting them down. So they'll have information available at no cost to them about the status of the health of their tree and the risk.
Those areas are already identified within the.
Yeah, so the disadvantaged communities, that's defined by the EPA, and the urban forester will need to spend 50% of their time in those areas, or either 50% of the time in those areas, or working on overall tree canopy equity for the city.
Do you know what percentage of Tumwater falls within the EPA
The EPA area,
areas?
it's imperfect. I can share the map with you if you'd like to see.
I-
Yeah.
There's many ways of measuring it, but it's like, is
sort
it
of-
parcel, is it area,
Yeah,
is it
it's
population,
skewed by the airport.
the commercial corridors?
It's a fairly substantial portion. The other important part of all this is that this overlaps a lot with the climate element development, as well as all the other state. So, urban forestry, but it's supporting all.
There's many ways of measuring. So I don't have a parcels, land, population.
I've messed around with that map before, yeah.
I don't know if this is part of your report, but how's the tree fund doing, and do we have a plan to spend that money? Or is that another item for later?
I don't have an answer for you because I don't actually get to see the tree fund. It's an account that finance sees, and when council asks for money to be moved from there to the budget, that's when I can see what's in there. I have no idea.
Do we have a plan, a strategy for utilizing it?
Not right now. There was money in the last budget, in the budget that we're ending at the end of this year, that was intended to spend down what was there, but we were not able to.
Why is that?
Do you remember the speed at which the planting plans were provided to you?
I know none of them were implemented.
Yes. The plans never manifested out of my hands,
The funds, excuse me, the funds can't be carried forward.
not that I'm aware of, so it's a very unfortunate situation.
For those projects, but they're still in the account for something else.
Yes, yes.
I-
So there are still funds from development contributions since that budget was
Yeah,
passed.
which isn't subject to the annual budget
Yeah.
changes.
Were the plans developed but not implemented, or not?
Not developed.
So what role can this group have in coming up with a new strategy for utilizing those funds for the
I'm honestly
urban
not
forestry
sure.
plan?
It's a staff capacity issue, again, not me, in developing those plans and mustering up the effort. It's been difficult, as you all learned with the inventory and maintenance plan, for us to even maintain the existing trees, to then have a concerted effort to then plant more trees that we then would not have the ability to maintain. We're treading water with the trees right now and just trying to keep them.
Has City of Tumwater pursued any, urban forestry grants from DNR?
Yes, so the inventory and maintenance plan was funded by a DNR grant. I know it's disappointing. I'm disappointed as well.
So we're letting developers cut down trees and they're paying into this fund that isn't getting utilized. Is that a good summary?
I'm sure I'll see that as a headline, yes. Yes.
So I'm interested in how we get unstuck from that. And you may not have an answer right this minute, but I'm very interested in that.
I have,
This group,
Well,
or
I
how we
mean,
can collaborate with.
The tree fund doesn't have to get spent, right? The-
correct. It sits and it accrues interest is my understanding.
But it's there for a reason to,
Replant trees,
yeah.
right.
hopefully with the urban forester, maybe there's not going to be a staff capacity issue and they'll be able to create those plans and get the plants and do the work.
Like Parks designating new trees, or you're saying that's their dilemma, they can't take care of what they have?
Park staff is here today and they will be available to answer questions when we get to the urban forestry management plan implementation, because that's what we have as part of our work plans is the actions within the urban forestry management plan, to which I'm not familiar with there being one necessarily for this year that's plant a bunch of trees. There's a lot of policy work, there's a lot of planning. There's likely work, I know that there's an action of like work with Stream Team and other organizations that are doing planting projects. So that's what's been directing our work more so than the tree fund.
Oh, thanks for sharing what you know.
I wish I knew more and I wish that we were further along. I am disappointed in it as well, but reality's not.
You used to use it to plant trees.
I have no, we will spend it to plant trees. That is its intention. We just need to be able to actually plan, plant, and take care of the trees. We're not gonna just put trees in the ground to let them die. We wanna do it right.
Brent, are you looking for somebody else that can answer some of those questions to come and be held accountable, for lack of a better term?
Sure. Who would that be?
Yeah, I think we're lost there.
I'm trying not to throw anyone under the bus right now. I can speak to staff and express the discontent and ask them to come.
Just answer questions.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, we want to be supportive, and if there's any way we as a body can help get things unstuck, I think we would be interested in that.
Yes, and I have no, can't find the word that I keep trying to say. No doubt that you all have the qualifications and the expertise here to make sure that it's not an obstacle. Where relying on staff capacity right now has been an obstacle, so perhaps we can change gears.
So this related, I read in the paper that Tamar could be hiring like 33 new positions, and
The urban forester is the only one in that 33 that would be benefiting the, there's probably others that will benefit the tree board and the tree planting efforts, but that one is the only direct one. There are additional maintenance staff, is my understanding, that can be helpful, but the urban forester is the tree board's position.
What about replanting trees that were lost? I think there were several along Little Rock that got mowed over last year. Are those things that they could just replace, like one here, one there, or?
Some of them have been replaced. I know that Parks has been able to replace at a much higher rate than our streets crew has been able to. I think that they didn't actually replace any trees in 2024. They were waiting until this season, and then other projects took precedence, is my understanding. But they still know that they have trees that they need to replant. And again, transportation engineering staff is here to answer questions. So if you want, if we can quickly go through public comment and then we can get to that item and then start asking questions of the staff expertise that's here.
Can I ask one more question before we get to that? Sorry, this may be a naive question, but the underutilization of that account that we're talking about, is that something that the council is aware of or not so much? That not at the level that they would have been brought to them?
I've not heard them bring it up, so I'm unaware of their feelings on it.
I'm not
Or,
asking, just their awareness. Because of prioritization of staff resources towards other things, that seems like that would be something they'd want to know about.
And something that was part of the code revision draft last I saw it for 16.08 was redefining how we can use the tree fund, because I think right now it's kind of like we can buy trees. but we can't buy associated vegetation, we can't have, assisted labor or designs
For education.
or education. Yeah, so we were opening up what could be, paid for by the tree fund, to help us make a more holistic project as opposed to just trees, because it also didn't account for irrigation or mulch or anything of that nature.
It was very strictly trees on city property.
And just the planting. Not
For the purchase of the tree. I don't think it even covered, like, if we needed, equipment to help us plant larger trees, also not that.
And I'm trying to look up what the tree count is.
In that component of the code development project, that's being put on hold as well, just because it's being lumped in with the rest?
It's, because essentially we're replacing 1608 with a new chapter.
Okay.
We want to do everything. We're trying to piecemeal it, because if we start to piecemeal, that takes time as well.
Yep, okay.
So we're not replacing it for a year because we can't spend the time to finalize the revisions.
We'll be able to finalize the revisions when we have staff time to deal with that. Desperately.
So obviously, a theme of tonight is that, there's not a lot of staff time available for tree-related issues as much as we would like. And that we have more capacity today than we did earlier in the year, and we'll have more capacity in the new year. Even if the code is not updated to allow us to do, different things with the tree fund, we will have more capacity and more expertise at the city to hopefully be able to make more progress.
I didn't catch, what's your estimate is when the urban forester will be on site?
By March 30th is the goal within the grant. So I am very eager to get the, job posting live, so that we can start seeking applications. And the City of Olympia's urban forester has already, not for him to join us or jump ship, but he has, people that he's aware of that he's gonna help make sure that, the greater arborist community in Western Washington is aware of the opening. So he's going to help us boost it beyond whatever the city might be able to advertise. We don't have,
Made from Georgia.
I mean, you got someone from Florida. No.
Another?
No, we are open to applicants from wherever, so long as they meet the minimum qualifications.
I think the one addition I have to your theme of this evening is I feel personally that this board is being underutilized, and I'm struggling to understand how we can be utilized and leveraged while we're in this bit of a pause.
Mm-hmm. And Tanya was sending me emails about this specifically earlier today, and I think that perhaps if we brainstorm around item 10 on the agenda when we get there about things that the tree board can take ownership of to utilize time wisely and your expertise. That would be a great place to have that conversation. And I have a couple resources on the screen that I will show during that time in case you need reference for the code or the urban forestry management plan for 2025 actions that are primarily the responsibility of the tree board, for instance.
Did you have time to share the email with everyone, Alyssa?
I did. I shared the email that you asked me to send out. Yes.
Thank you.
Public comment?
If we have anybody, we have no attendees from the public and no individuals in the room that aren't tree board or staff.
Perfect. Okay,
Well,
well,
this is unusual. It's usually packed.
move right along. Okay. The urban forestry management plan implementation.
Yes. So before I share my screen with the lovely Excel that I'm sure you all can see really well on the printed version. Yes, I apologize for that. I want to introduce the staff that are here with us tonight to thank them for their time and also so that you know who is at the table, who you can ask questions of. So we have Chase Olson, who is from our Parks Department. He is one of the staff that is seeking ISA certification, and he is the furthest along out of everyone in the city who is interested in that. He works in parks and the landscaping, and he is very passionate about trees and landscaping. So, Chase, I don't know if you want to say hello.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, hi.
Hi, Chase. We also have Bill Lindauer from our Transportation and Engineering Department. He is here to answer questions related to transportation and engineering, so streets, right-of-way. So as we go through the spreadsheet, or if you have general questions, like it sounds like they're already bubbling to the top, anything related to transportation engineering, Bill's our guy tonight. We have Brad and Dana from Community Development to answer questions related to community development and urban forestry management plan implementation. And then I am representing the Water Resources and Sustainability team for your questions related to that. So with that, I will go to our lovely spreadsheet here. And I know last year you wanted me to simply filter, is this the right one? Here we go. Filter by status. Is that what you would like to do again this year?
Sure.
Okay. So we'll prioritize looking at those items that are delayed and go through it. And I'm just going to stop share to make sure that I'm sharing it correctly.
And this could be delayed from this year or from the past year, or
So
was fast.
the way that I update this spreadsheet is earlier in the year, I was having quarterly check-ins with all the departments. That ended up being very time-consuming and hard to schedule. So much like last year's, towards October, I scheduled meetings with each department individually to go through the items that were assigned to them within that time frame to get status reports on all of them. So this is this spreadsheet here is items that were scheduled in the Urban Forestry Management Plan to be completed this year or before. It doesn't include items that are to be started next year and beyond. While many of those actions have already been started, I wanted to make sure that we were looking at what we were expected to do.
From its inception to today.
Yes. So from 2021 to 2024, these actions were slated to be happening. And these items here are the ones that are delayed. And I can read, the red is the action. I can see it, so I'll read it out loud. Thankful for my glasses today. The first action here that is delayed is support and incentivize the use of large canopy trees in appropriate areas to provide maximum benefits. And the progress report as of December of this year is that we will begin this after the code amendment work has been completed, as it includes a new approved and prohibited tree species list. So that is the reason it's delayed, because we don't have a new list to then support and incentivize the right species of large canopy trees in appropriate areas. Feel free to focus on this. We're going to go through each item.
We don't have we have a current recommended.
We have a current recommended tree list, but everyone has pretty much expressed that they do not like that. So we're not trying to pursue this action twice. We'd like to do it when there's a tree list that makes everybody happy first.
And we can't work on that now. That doesn't have to be delayed.
That's what Brad said. I wrote it down.
I thought I heard that.
Yes, we'll have to delay until we actually have staff.
So likely when the urban forester is on staff, perhaps we will be able to muster up time with community development to work on that together.
That would help.
Yeah.
Can the tree board do what we can do before staff has to be involved?
Yes, we have the draft, the most recent draft. You all have already provided comments on it when we had the intern Amita Devarajan come and speak. Yes, I can bring that as part of item 10. We can schedule that within the schedule for next year when you would like to have it, and I'll bring what we have to you. You can provide comments. We'll take that, and then when we have the staff time, we'll take your comments and move that forward.
When I was working in California, one of our nearby universities was working on like a climate appropriate species list for urban trees. Is anyone aware of a body of work like that being done here by academics?
There's a South Puget Sound climate adaptive tree list, that we had a presentation from Amita, an intern that I had last year, who looked at our draft approved street tree list that was in process, and assessed those to suggest removing some trees from that list, which the list right now is short. The draft was much bigger and then got dwindled a little bit. We also got review from DNR staff. I'm pointing, sorry, it's not you. From DNR staff from the Urban and Community Forestry on that draft list as well. So we've made some progress. It's not nowhere, but we can bring it to you all to discuss again. And I can provide you with that report if you'd like.
And what does it mean by incentivizing the use of large canopy trees? So does that mean like planting trees that get large or maintaining trees that are large? And what would an incentive look like?
I'm going to ask the tree board to answer that since you developed the urban forestry management plan. What was your intention?
My memory is that in doing assessments, there were credits given for trees left, and larger trees would get more credit than smaller trees. So that was the incentive. That was one of the incentives.
And what are these credits?
They're not in place yet.
Well,
Part of the draft.
design was, we were saying, okay, if you're proposing a development, then you need to leave, in the past, it's been so many trees.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we've tried to incentivize the larger trees by using, I believe it's credits instead of stems.
That's similar to the work you were doing, right?
Well, the idea was to, in older trees that have greater value for a variety of reasons, either aesthetic, carbon
For environmental.
storage side of things, we wanted to do, incentivize it through that method of people saying, well, if I can get 10 credits, which is a lot of individual trees, which is kind of the way the code's set up now, that's the process.
And that is part of the staff draft that Brad was referring to. We did follow a path for credits, in which case larger diameter at standard height were valued higher. But again, that's the draft. Can we move on to the next item?
Sure.
Implement in coordination with the Noxious Weed Board and the Washington State Department of Fish and Wildlife an invasive flora and fauna species control strategy citywide to safeguard the health of the community and urban forest. And here I have park staff are in contact with the Noxious Weed Board when issues arise on city park properties. So we are responsive to noxious weed issues, but not proactive necessarily in the way in which this action is written. Suggested.
I think it was leaning towards replacing that area with native plants. When the invasive species are removed, that they get replaced with native plants. I hope I'm not making that up. That's something I work on in another part of my life, but correct me if that doesn't apply to.
I can definitely see how this action could be interpreted in that way. I could also see how this action could be interpreted that we need to develop like a policy on how we control noxious weeds, and that we would consult the Noxious Weed Board and Fish and Wildlife. That's how I interpreted it, which is helpful to hear how it was intended.
May not be exclusive, could be both of them.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for delay is staff capacity.
Yes.
So like if the action to achieve, what's written here is to develop a procedure, a city procedure, what does that process look like?
I'm going to ask Chance if you could speak to this, since I know that Chase. If you could speak to this item in terms of parks and what you all do with when you're removing noxious weeds.
Yeah, so what we're doing currently now is we just identify as many noxious or invasive weeds as we can and try to remove mechanically. Where some instances we use herbicides to remove weeds. We've had spotted knapweed pop up in some of our areas, and then I've also been like manually removing yellow flag iris down on our riverfront properties as well. We have not implemented a plan to replace these areas with like native plants yet because of staffing.
Thanks, Chase, that's helpful. I guess follow-up question, if the city were to, if the Parks Department, I guess I'll speak to that specifically, were to develop some sort of a procedure or policy on what to do, like what does proactive treatment entail, and come up with some sort of a procedure or policy around that, what does that process look like to get to a policy?
That's a great question. I think that was something that would have to go through our Parks Board. I'm honestly not really sure how we would implement that within our parks right now with the amount of employees and like funds we have at this moment.
Chase, this is Jim. Isn't it standard to use current best practices in all of your operations? And do we really have to specify specific practices in order for current best practices to be used?
So the Parks Department does not have a current standard for best practices, unfortunately. We've looked at the National Recreation Parks Association standards, and we're trying to implement those at this time. But if anyone has any suggestions for us, I would be open ears.
So Jim, are you saying that is it not a policy currently that we use best practice, not necessarily which best practice, but best practice?
Yes.
And so whichever becomes the new best practice fills in that gap, and we don't have to have a policy?
We don't have to take
Implemented?
time to tell the Parks Department how to do their job.
I heard you, okay.
Yeah.
I think the Noxious Weed Board has best practices that they've developed and shared.
And
They don't necessarily, you have to use this one, but here's a menu of best practices
They're-
that you could select from.
they're probably updated regularly.
Yeah, they are.
But the city does not have a policy to follow best practices as set forth by the Noxious Weed Board?
Not to the best of my knowledge, no.
I'm sorry, I'm still struggling to understand what the process to get to that is. How is policy at
Policy,
that level?
policy typically is adopted by the council, so then, staff work with the community, develop policy, so that's done in tandem, and then the policy is brought through a public process so that it has full transparency. So that's where staff is needed to carry it through that policy, to make sure we're crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's for that transparent process, and that's what takes the time.
An alternative to that, which transparency is key, but would be having a standard operating procedure, which is written internally and utilized within the Parks Department. And I imagine the Parks Department already has various standard operating procedures, and that this could be developed as one. Again, it would take some time to develop that, and it could be as simple as use the most recent resources from the Noxious Weed Board. Here's a link to the Noxious Weed Board website. Done.
And then because of public discourse and having opportunities for everyone to comment, then even in that process, there's probably some people that would disagree that the Noxious Weed Board has the best standards and best practices because they adopt a, what is the management practice? Where you use all the tools are available in the. No,
Integrated pest management.
integrated pest management. So when you use integrated pest management, you're using herbicides and different things. And there are members of our community that would absolutely not agree that that is pest management.
I can tell you that staff, not this year, but last year, in my department, had conversations with, I think, King County and Snohomish noxious weed councils, if that's the correct terminology, to get some kind of tips and tricks for Japanese knotweed specifically, and learn about what mixes of what herbicides at what frequency at what time of year work best. And then I think we needed to go through a process to make sure that all of our staff had the necessary pesticide and herbicide licenses, and trying to figure out if it was that they needed them for aquatics as well, if they were applying them, and how we go about making sure that everyone had that training and the time to take the test and then take the test and store the materials correctly. So nothing is as simple as it seems, but a standard operating procedure with some public comments would probably be good, but not 0 hours of work. So right now we're being responsive and we're removing noxious weeds and also trying to make sure that we're removing noxious weeds in a way that makes sense for things like wetland mitigation and whatnot, so that we're doing it at the right time at the right place. That's also part of it.
Like where Brody's going, I know that this would be yet another column, action to get unstuck.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not saying it's gonna happen tomorrow, but at least there's a plan for trying to get unstuck,
Mm-hmm.
or even take
Well,
some
are you
time.
guys suggesting that the city of Tumwater have a plan to go in and remove all noxious weeds and then replace it with something? Because that just doesn't seem feasible.
No, I think it
Develop a strategy.
to develop a strategy.
Like if you have the funds to do this area or 10%, what would it look like? What would your strategy be to, you know, whatever?
It seems like that would be something that would be better done by consultants than city staff.
Yeah, I don't know what goes into prioritizing certain areas over others, but certainly could be a prioritization process.
Part of that is also assessing all of the areas of the city for their presence or absence of invasive or noxious weeds and what kind, and to what extent. So to create a strategy, we also have to establish a baseline where we know some areas that we treat regularly, but not all of the areas.
I think that's an action within your strategy.
Regarding the best management practices, so the noxious weed board, when I'm working with landowners in Thurston County, I actually struggle finding specific best management practices for specific species from the statewide noxious weed council. The Thurston County Noxious Weed Board isn't very informative either. My go-to usually is King County's best management practices that are all very established.
It's very well staffed also to develop those.
Thank you.
So that could be part of the conversation with the public, also as if they're comfortable with us using King County reference material, because sometimes that also does not go over well. But I agree, they have really wonderful resources. Any other questions on this item before we move on to the next one?
How many items do we have?
Great
Yeah.
question.
I think there's 15 that are delayed.
That's reasonable.
Okay. The rest of them are in progress. I know we don't talk about the good things because we're filtering for just the problems, but coordinate with the fire department on actions to minimize fire risks associated with urban forestry. So this and the next one both are they're associated with one another, so I'm going to read both of them so that we can talk about them in unison. Remove trees and understory in specific situations identified in the Tumwater Annex of the Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan for the Thurston region to guard against wildfires. And for both of these, the fire department plans to begin this work soon, now that the hazard mitigation plan has been adopted. So it was just adopted this year,
Earlier this year.
earlier this year.
Erica Smith Erickson from our office has been working with the other departments on various mitigation actions. And had discussions, I think, with the fire department last week on where they are in certain things. All of this in turn ties back into a sub-element of the climate element. So it's being reinforced in lots of ways.
Yes, we're including, so we'll have the climate element open for public comment, ideally by January 1st or before. And it includes a lot of actions about how to adapt to wildfire and smoke conditions. And of course, when that's out, I will be sending it to you all for you all to review, either if you would like to have it in a tree board meeting or if you want to do it as individual community members, that's at your discretion. You tell me. Ready for the next one?
What do these areas look like that the fire department is identifying in these hazard mitigation plan?
Can you say the first part of your question again? Sorry.
What do these areas look like? Is it like Scotch broom fields? Like, it says, removing tree and understory in specific situations.
I'm going to pass it to Brad.
I don't know if I can speak to that, beyond just identifying areas where it's near structures, large concentration of
Defensible,
structures,
yeah.
or have a higher degree potentially of wildfire. Those would probably be the two big criteria that they'd be looking at for identifying such areas. Obviously, it'd have to be city-owned property, so.
Is there additional concern with the right-of-way too, Brad? Is there additional concern with the right-of-way and any sparks from vehicles?
I don't know.
What about homeless populations?
I would say
Welfare.
there have been discussions about that, but I would put that farther down on the concern list in terms of wildfire risk, at least in Tumwater. We know of particular areas to be.
Not hearing anything else, I'll move on to the next item. And thank you for your questions on this, by the way. Develop a program to work with public and private property owners in maintaining and providing a public safety with the community and urban forest. So this action is delayed because I suggest we delay this action until the urban forester is hired to develop that program to work with public and private property owners, because I don't have that expertise. I would like to. Next item here, regularly review and update the public works standards, the development guide, and facilities procedures for the maintenance of city trees in the community and urban forests, and modify to reflect best tree management practices and employee safety. This item is delayed until the code amendment updates are finalized, because they would inform those changes that we would be making to these other giant policy documents.
But there is one currently.
Yes, there is a development guide and public works standards. And we have to redo the, update the drainage design and erosion control manual, which does include some specific tree species and plant species that are suggested. That is somewhat prescribed by Department of Ecology, but if you would like a document to review as part of the tree board, we can, by all means, bring you that. And we can have discussions. I know you all like to speak with the stormwater crews and stormwater teams, and that would be a way to provide comment on that as it's being updated, if you would like. Any comments on this? Review the urban forestry management plan regularly to monitor its progress, maintain its schedule, revise based on new information, and ensure that it is working with other city strategic priorities, plans, and regulations. So I interpret this mostly as the update to the urban forestry management plan, and I would certainly want to wait until the urban forester is on staff before we take that on. We'll also be doing the tree canopy assessment on schedule next year, so we could also have that information to then bring that to update of the urban forestry management plan.
That noted in there somewhere,
It's not on here.
action plan.
It's one of the 2025 actions that was attachment C, I think. And we did get funding also allocated for the data that we need to purchase to do that. And our GIS staff is at the ready in 2025 to conduct that using the methods that we used last time so that they're replicable.
One and the one before it feel more like part of the job description for the urban forester position.
Yes, and I'm sure that they will be regularly going through. Part of the 6-month plan that I have for them when they first start is to read all of these. And I'm sure as they're reading all of these, they will be flagging potential issues or opportunities to improve. And they will know that these are delayed urban forestry management plan actions that they can then determine to put in their work plan. And when that work plan is developed, it'll be coming to tree board so that y'all can see what is expected. Normally, I bring you my work plan for the next year. I didn't do that this year because I have no idea what the urban forester is going to pick and choose in terms of the order in which they implement the plan. I know it will come from the plan, but I'm gonna give them some, authority to determine the order at which they want to do those things. So that's why you got the pool of 2025 actions. You still get 20% of my time. Then we'll have the urban forester with a lot more expertise working on it too. But yes, this is a cyclical action that they'll need to work on regularly. This one too. Use adaptive management to review the effectiveness of specific actions during the urban forestry management plan timeline. I'd like to do this with the urban forester. That's why it's delayed. Ready for the next one? Develop a stable funding source and budget for maintenance of natural forests on city lands such as critical or shoreline areas and their buffers and other such areas. Addressing deferred maintenance of street trees and parks was prioritized in the draft 2025-2026 biennium budget. Systematic rather than reactive maintenance for natural forests and critical areas is delayed. So what we identified in the inventory maintenance plan for the necessary funding for a 4-year tree trimming and pruning cycle, we got about a quarter of that funded, but it is more than we have gotten funded for deferred maintenance of trees in the past, and it does note that we do need to have a more systematic approach, and we have the data to know what trees need to be pruned for what reason, at what location, and we can prioritize those trees with whatever data, money that we do have available. But it's not a stable funding source. We don't have enough right now, so.
I haven't been here long enough to know whether the DNR's urban forestry grants are pretty stable. Might that be an avenue to be looking at?
It could be. My understanding is that working on deferred maintenance is their lowest priority for funding, however. They will fund it, but it's the last thing that they want to fund. Yeah. Doesn't mean that we can't apply for it, and with the urban forester, we'll have more capacity to apply for those grants. Ready for the next item? Actively maintain the city tree webpage to educate the public on the importance of trees, proper property care and maintenance, and other tree-related information. I think it's the most efficient use of time to update the city website when we have new information. So when the codes are updated, feel free to tell me now that we should update it with more information now. It doesn't take a whole lot of time to do the website, but doing a more comprehensive overhaul when we have the new codes seems best to me, but you're an advisory board. You can advise me differently.
You know how many people look at that page each year?
I can ask our IT to run a report on that.
Can you filter out Jim?
Probably not.
That's the things, I guess I'm interested in your community education background in this. Some of the material from Arbor Day Association has talked about trying to create an environment of trust with the community so that and so that you don't have to write everything in ordinance, in code. So it can change, or it can evolve, maybe that's a better word, as new information becomes available. So the struggle with using the web to get information out like recommended trees, it sounds like we can't put anything on the web that hasn't gone through all of this approval process. Is there a way we can streamline that?
Streamline which?
Current information, today's information on the web related to urban forestry.
Answer a little bit. That's all you think.
I mean, you have rules you have to follow as to what can go on the web.
Exactly, that's where I was.
Can we?
There needs to be someone that we have a contract with, a .gov or a .edu that is approved. Not .edu, a .org that is approved. We can post,
Approved by the city council or?
normally it's a approved charity that is, there's a list of approved charities and none of them, they're all local charities. So we can get some approval for .orgs administratively, but that's the information that we're permitted. Gotta be .gov, someone that we have a contract with, or a select group of .orgs, which I realize is narrow. for
I'm
providing-
talking about putting a tree list on the website.
There is a tree list on the website.
Let's say we want to change that 2 months from now. Do we have to go through a lengthy process to make an editing change?
Oh, no.
If the tree list is
Web.
approved, it's getting the tree list approved, that would be the lengthy process, not putting it on the website.
So also in terms of public engagement and community or public outreach and community engagement, it is also a lengthy process, and we all get to see that thing that happens out in the community, but that takes 2 years of planning to get there. In a lot of cases, when you have a program and you're developing it, because you need a target audience, you need to know what information they need, you need to know what they already know, you need to know what they care about, and like it takes quite a bit of research to figure out where their gaps are in order to fit the right niche. And granted, yeah, we could slap something together and put it on the web. Is it going to be effective? Right? There's a whole branch, and this is something that we struggle with. There's a whole branch of knowledge about communications and what's effective, and user experience, and how you get people to do a certain thing, right, through social marketing. And so fast tracking that isn't effective. That's why we have a branch of knowledge that knows how to do it well.
I wonder if there's opportunities, to Jim's point, and realizing the constraints that Alyssa, laid out. Like the DNR has the Tree Link newsletter, right? And they have the Small Forest Landowner newsletter. And these publications, they have communications managers behind them,
Right.
making sure that they're effective, but I don't think the lift is very large there from the communications perspective. A lot of it's coming from subject matter experts at the program level. Is there an opportunity for this board to develop something similar, and not necessarily be speaking with the voice of the city, but as like the board's recommendations, the board?
A board newsletter,
Yeah.
board newsletter?
I mean, that doesn't necessarily have to fall, you have to go through the rigorous process, right?
Probably does.
And I would think, and
Oh, yeah, I'm following you. Links to information, maybe? Articles? Oh.
Who would that benefit?
Who's
if
gonna
you
watch
get to read
it?
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see some opportunity, and I think it was one of the pieces earlier talking about like an education and outreach component, with the urban forester, if that's something that they have awareness of, and it is a whole body of knowledge, and of who's going to the website, and do we need to advertise it some, and develop materials for making it engaging and letting
Even,
people know it exists.
even driving people to the website is a whole branch. Oh! Pun intended.
Light suggestion, because it's not my person and my budget. I think it's probably appropriate for the urban forester to take a look at our current tree page, because our current tree page is very much, this is what the code says. I think there are opportunities there to add additional information on tree care and other resources. And basically, we can update what it says on introductory things and sort of set the framework for updating the full code of the tree list and all that stuff at a later time. I think there's groundwork that could probably be done before.
We can get,
Just get people excited about trees and urban forestry and our legacy trees. And I know there's a page for legacy trees, but how engaging is it? Or would people be interested in knowing about it and going there and learning something about it and heaven forbid, take some action?
I would be interested to know how many people actually look at the website, because I bet it's very few.
Sure it is.
Do a little research on that.
yep,
And more importantly, talk to other jurisdictions who have similar web pages, similar interests to ours, and see what they've been doing.
I mean, having, even just ordinances is also pretty helpful for people who want to know what the regulations are, and having a very clear where you would send them to.
But you can't assume everybody's a geek like me when it comes. So you gotta draw them in with other things.
You need the pretty pictures, right, Brad?
Yeah. More pictures.
Yeah.
We have no pictures of
And video, testimony, video.
from the tree itself.
So there is user X perspective that says website on government, or sorry, pictures on government websites where people are being drawn for information and they want to find out the nuts and bolts and the why and the how is ineffective. So.
What is effective?
That having the information in plain language, bullet points, as brief as possible, pithy. That's what's effective on government websites. Because people are coming forth, but they're reaching to us for something specific. And the easier and quicker they can find it, that's what we need to do for them.
If the current page is pretty limited in like regurgitating the code.
Right.
And, that kind of limits what the city feels that they can say. Can the board not have a voice on that page and we be less limited than the city because we're just a citizen board that's supported by the city?
I'm not saying that a page about trees that is populated by the ideas here would be a bad thing. I'm just saying you don't want your whole website to be photos. And people, they use our website very differently than they use most other websites. And the things that they Google us for, they're gonna hit us differently than they're gonna hit the Conservation District, then they're gonna hit the Arbor Day Foundation, then they're gonna hit this organization or that organization. They all have different niches and different roles.
This is our existing tree page. We have information on the urban forestry management plan. And then we have a link to our protection of tree and vegetation code, the urban forestry management plan. We have a tree section here where it shows approved tree species.
That's the current list.
Current list, stuff on city forester. Each of these are accordions that open up, prohibited. It explains what it is. Tree care resources are present. Don't chop trees. That's all that's there right now. Tree City. This we should probably remove because it's old, but, and tree permit.
Just on that today.
Yeah.
Trying to find some very specific information.
So this is the information that's here now. Most of it's code related, which is why I was saying, let's wait until the code is updated, but we can add some additional educational resources on here, for sure. The next item here, establish administrative procedures to enhance the city interdepartmental communication and aid the further success of the urban forestry management plan. I'd like to have the urban forester on board before developing administrative procedures.
First thing gonna be housed, they're gonna be at South Puget Sound Community College, like.
Yes, yep. We're still trying to figure out where in my office they'll be, but yes.
Because you're,
And also, can I clarify for just a minute? This grant was designed with that person in mind. These tasks were designed with an urban forester in mind.
These tasks, so this is the urban forestry management plan.
Okay.
The grant was, the grant proposal and the grant contract was designed with the actions in the urban forestry management plan. It was very much an effort to get the funding for the urban forester, which is an action, and then associated programs that could be interpreted as being actions in the urban forestry management plan.
So it completely makes sense that there are things here that we cannot do without a urban forester.
In my opinion, yes.
Even though we said it's part of the plan before we had the person, or the position.
it's a 20-year plan, right? No, I'm not kidding, it was.
Yes, it's I think it's 20, is it 20 or 10? 20-year plan.
We dream big.
We're almost towards the end of these delayed ones. And I realize that we have 2 other actions, including one is a brainstorm and that it's about 8:30. So I'm gonna take the time it takes, but I'll try to be brief. Formalize relationships with organizations and green industries that share common aims affecting community and urban forest sustainability. That makes sense to build that relationship with the full-time staff person that speaks the same language.
You're doing that. You have relationships with other organizations outside of Tumwater.
Yeah, Dana, before she joined us in Tumwater, was organizing a urban forestry roundtable for Thurston County Forestry staff. Definitely developed relationships. Alex is here. I met him at that roundtable. Not necessarily building relationships with like nurseries. I'm not doing that necessarily, except for the one that we consistently get the good price for our Arbor Day plants. So more could be done in terms of relationship building, and I think it would be helpful to have someone that's actually from that same industry to build those relationships.
Not that any work stops because we don't have that person dead stop, but the effectiveness when they are here.
Is exponential, yes. Work with local tree and landscape contractors as well as retail and wholesale landscaping firms to stock trees suitable for the urban environment. Same thing, same thought process as the item before. Almost there. Use the city website and social media for periodic articles on the proper care and maintenance of trees on public and private property. I suggest doing this when we have an expert on staff. Last one, identify tree specimens, including heritage trees on city property that illustrate proper tree care and discuss them in articles on the city website and social media. I suggest we do this with an urban forester and when the code amendment update is updated. Obviously, this year has also been a hard year for the city regarding trees, one particular. So there's also some just being tasteful about not implementing some of these actions when it wouldn't come out well.
Well, that's not on the agenda, but can you share status of where that project is?
The second tree assessment is still in process. My understanding is that we're waiting on permit approval from historic preservation at the state level to touch the tree. We've done all the visual inspection and on the ground, but we can't do any boring or getting into the tree until we have that permit approved and it's still at the
Did we
state
have
level.
the first time we did those?
We didn't bore. We climbed and malleted.
You used radio?
Yes. Tomography, sonic tomography. No, I think it became apparent to us later on that DAP needed to be involved.
And this, I'm thinking July was when we said we were going to go for a second opinion, August?
We're still waiting on the permit. We can't go further without the permit.
State Department of
It's taken the state 5 months to do that.
They were in the tree in October.
That's not slow, Jim. I mean, it takes 6-8 months to get something approved through
That's
the
not
county.
unusual.
Yeah.
Interesting.
We can't do the boring or any invasive kinds of exams, yes, thank you, for the assessment without that approval. I basically get updates when you all ask for them, so please continue to ask for them so I can stay updated.
Is the RFP, I think, can we talk about an RFP being ready for that second assessment?
Oh, yeah, Trent was on, reviewed the proposals, and they've been selected, they've been contracted, they have finished some of the work, and now they're waiting on that permit to finish all of the work. Because we opened it up in this second assessment to methods that weren't used, that could be more helpful. I'm trying to remember the name of it, but not the X-ray of the tree, but the boring, and then.
Boring?
Well, we did the sonic tomography.
Resistograph?
Thank you. Resistograph was one of the suggested methods, and that is, I think, part of, it's an option in the scope for the second assessment.
Supposed to be more accurate than the sonic tomography?
That's my understanding, but again, it would be really helpful to have a fully skilled urban forester answer these questions. You all have much more.
Layers of information that can help. inform conclusions.
Did they let you know how the first part of that second assessment went, Alyssa?
I'm not privy to it, no.
Okay.
I don't think we've seen it yet. We just know that it's been done to a certain level. Obviously, it's not complete, so we can't draw any.
I'd assume they wouldn't write a report until it's complete.
That's my assumption as well.
This is beyond our scope, but not that I look for it every day. It seems like there hasn't been a lot of information shared with the community on current status. Have people seen status?
No, I haven't.
Is that intentional or?
No.
No.
Like I said, I don't get this information unless you all ask for it, and then I ask for it, and then I
Not
get
just
it.
this board, but the community.
I think, there have been other distractions in terms of budgeting and other, some of the key staff for that. So I think we'll probably be going back to more of a normal, update process.
People ask me in my professional role all the time.
And we're likely to not have anything.
I just defer to the city. I don't.
Yeah.
Anything. For,
We won't have anything, like effectively useful to share until the assessment is complete. So,
Assessment won't even be done until the permit is
correct. Yes.
We don't know, and the permit may not be granted for a couple more months.
Yeah, it could be 8, 12, 15, I don't know how backed up they are.
It's DAP, it's stuck in DAP?
Yeah.
It's been there for how long?
I'm not sure.
August, I think.
Goodness, my experience with DAP has always been 30 days. But hearing 6 to 8 months is alarming.
Don't know. I don't know, and they're not subject to a number of days they must respond.
Yeah.
well, thanks for that update.
Thanks for continuing to ask for them, and when you ask for them in the tree board meeting, then it becomes public record and other people get to hear about it as well. Granted, people can ask and I can ask again and then give them the update, but there isn't like a weekly briefing or anything on the Davis Meeker Oak.
It doesn't have its own webpage yet.
Not ours.
Yeah, it's probably got several.
The next item on the agenda is one that Board Member Sador had asked for. Sador?
Okay.
Oh, yes, also, other city staff that were here for item 8, you are free to go. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll see you again next year when we go through this list again.
That include myself?
That can include yourself. Yes, thank you.
So that means you have to come back next.
Yes, so Jason, Bill, you are free to go. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for
Absolutely.
Tuning in.
It was interesting. Thanks.
Bill. Bill,
Looking forward to listening
Thanks, Brad.
to you a little bit more here.
Yeah.
thank you for reminding me, Brad, that people can go.
Yeah.
Okay, Jim Seymour here. The November DNR Urban Forestry newsletter that I assume we all get featured an article on, I believe it's a Japanese practice, and I don't know how to pronounce the name.
Miyawaki.
Okay, and they were my understanding is that DNR was offering this information to tree boards and urban forestry professionals as an option recommendation, and apparently it's being tried in a community or two, tribe or two. I think they're in eastern Washington. But I thought it was an interesting thought. The examples that they showed about this Miyawaki forest, just in summary, you got a plot of land that is perhaps damaged, and it's going to be re-landscaped. How should you do it? This Japanese professor, I think it is, scientist, has proposed using native species, planting very high density, watering it for 3 years, and then leaving it alone in what might be called a mini natural area I don't know, natural preserve, or at least a mini forest. The key points in this are, as I understand it, the intent is low to no maintenance after 3 years. Creating a diverse plant community. I didn't see any reference to animal issues mentioned in here. But I don't see any, it's like no lawns. We're using native grasses, native shrubs, trees, in what would be an unusually high dense planting mode. And then expecting the duff, the leaves, the needles, the whatever, just to stay on the ground. The city doesn't come in and clean it up. It's not mowed. It's not any of that stuff. My understanding is that the state capitol has a few areas on campus that they're letting go natural. Was that planted? Or was that just left alone? Or, okay.
Mainly inherited.
And you've been doing that for some 5-10 years now? And what's been your experience on public areas, unmaintained? What are some of the challenges with doing that?
Yeah, so it has to fit the stakeholders and vision for what they think a certain area should look like. So there's an aesthetic component you have to be careful about.
On the campus?
Yeah, for sure, but then in general, I think, with any community.
Okay.
There's always the aesthetic component of what people think is aesthetic. It varies widely. And then for us, and not unique to Capitol, is the security component. There is some maintenance required to maintain security lines of sight. That window between 2 feet and 6 feet. So there has been some pruning required to maintain those security lines of sight. But other than that, it's pretty much left to go through natural succession and progression.
Okay.
What species are found in those areas, like berberis, Oregon grape, I would guess, would be one of them?
It depends on the soil and the moisture and exposure, but your typical Western Washington habitat, woodland habitat.
My understanding from this article is that the planting is intense and focused. I mean, they're not just letting it alone to revegetate, which in my neighborhood, that means Scotch broom. You know? So they're intentionally planting a wide variety of forbs, grasses, shrubs, trees.
You want all the layers.
Yeah. And Trent, you know, you do this for a living, and I think there are some businesses that have tried to do this. My wife and I were walking by the new state lab over here behind L&I, and I was talking to her about this, and she said, well, the way they've landscaped this new lab, it's all native plants, but they're like 8 and 16 feet apart, with lots of mulch, which is common practice. I mean, that's kind of Northwest landscaping, I'm thinking here.
Right.
Trent, what do you see about the challenges of this sort of way of landscaping public spaces?
Well, I think, for one, I think the security aspect is the biggest. Like, that's gonna always be, you know, you can't, you know, most design on the SEPTED principle, which is the security. Like, you gotta be able to see through things, and, you know, you gotta be able to police it through the street, and you gotta let the light be able to shine down. And then, you know, depending on what that public space looks like, if there's wild spaces like the Capitol campus has, yeah, you can do something like that. They have slopes and things like that, you know, don't need to be maintained. But, you know, some areas have a very specific look that they're trying to achieve. And even, you know, a lot of times we'll plant like native grasses and want it to go native and, you know, just like grow and lump over. Well, the maintenance department might just come in and mow it. So it kind of defeats the purpose. And then, you know, it gets taken over by, you know, windblown rye or whatever. And after 10 years, you can't even tell it was native. So, you know, you have that sort of challenge as well. Yeah. So it's maintenance and it's, you know, security and ethics. And something like, I hadn't seen this before, but something like replanting something out in the middle of nowhere is a lot different than, you know, a downtown commercial area.
Yeah, this, it looks like most of the pictures are in the rural environments rather than urban environments, although it's distributed as an urban alternative. And that would be kind of an operations issue. I mean, but I'm reminded like Pioneer Park. There's areas, of course, of intense management and athletic fields and all of that. But then there's also areas that are, I was out there 2 weeks ago, and you can see where they've mowed 4 feet along the paths. I assume that's to create security and to keep rabbits or animals. I'm not sure why they mow along the paved paths in that area. But then there's areas where they planted hawthorn and some native plants, and then just kind of let it go. Let the grasses grow and the Oregon grape and the sword fern, all of that. And when I take my great nephew back to the river, there's areas there that I would say are not secure. I mean, where, you know, you could hide. But we're doing that in that park. It's not like many of the other parks, you know, Brewery Park or something like that. In having this natural area associated with the non-athletic part, but it's still used by the community. Lots of people go down to the river and swim and fish and do whatever, but they're going through an insecure area to do that.
The riparian buffer.
Yeah.
So, you know, I like the idea of having, the struggle I have, we have undeveloped natural areas in our community that are being transitioned to high-intensity residential and commercial stuff. So we're removing many of the undeveloped natural areas in Tumwater. And then this guy's saying, well, plant them back. But we're not intentionally planting parking lots and stuff with high-density natural materials. Is this something we should pursue, we should consider? I mean, it's an operations issue, so it's not, it might be a recommendation from us, but you two, I know, directly are involved in this sort of landscaping, and I wonder what your experience was, but you may have something too.
Yeah, I've heard about this method before. I definitely appreciate the sentiment behind it and like renaturalizing some of these, especially more urban areas. I do have skepticism on this particular method. I've not seen any that are particularly old. I looked at the website that you included there for the Washington sites, and both of them were planted in 2024.
Right.
Specifically, I mean, just in forestry practices, when you plant trees at such a high density, they just turn into dog hair stands.
Yes.
And regarding like public safety, if that was done in an urban area, these might be really thin, unstable trees. I would definitely be curious to see, like, long-term what one of these might look like, but I do have skepticisms on this particular method.
And Brett, yours, the areas on your campus don't usually involve trees, do they? They're usually grasses and shrubs.
Certainly a lot of treat areas.
Are there? Okay.
That's the slopes.
Oh, yes, okay.
Well, you should visit our brand-new project, the new building for the Senate. The parking
Oh,
lot is
it's just being built.
intensely planted
Okay,
with layers, and mainly native plants, edible plants. So it's a version of this in a highly public,
edible by what? What's
Native
gonna,
American, indigenous plants that the Native Americans use and continue to use.
okay, it's not, I mean, you're not trying to attract deer or elk onto the campus?
No.
Okay.
That works just fine by itself, yeah.
Yeah,
No, intentionally honoring the culture of the indigenous
I see.
Americans and edible plants were and continue to be important to them.
Is there hazelnut included in that?
Not this particular plant, but we have many on campus. Yeah. These are more fleshy berries, fleshy edible plants.
Okay, well, I thought I
But
would
then
just,
the challenge is, and I haven't given up, but I wanted to provide some interpretation so the people that are in this space understand some of the philosophy and the goals. Otherwise, you probably, one person in 500,000 might get it just by looking.
well, I know you've had signage up there by the DOT building or OB2 where, you've had native grasses, and you said this is intentionally not mowed, not
Yeah, I think
maintained.
that's really important for whatever the city does, is to help improve our interpretation. And it comes back to that educational piece.
Thank you.
Here's an interesting picture here. You know, when you look at 4,000 square feet with 1,000 plants,
Isn't that incredible?
and then put the fence around it, so the rabbits will just have a ball, you know? 'Cause you just, no matter what you do along that edge. Did you see this?
It's salad.
Rainier's doing this some down in the harbor,
Really?
and, they gotta build an elk fence. But heck, the other animals, you know, the gulls, the mountain beavers and everything else, it's gonna be interesting what they can end up with inside that fence.
The smorgasbord.
So I don't know if, I don't know, is the landscape final for the Tumwater's new maintenance facility, that property?
Not final, but I think we're done looking at it.
I was wondering if that's an opportunity to integrate, maybe not this exact model, but something with the philosophy behind it. Could be a good demonstration area, because there'll be a park there too, right?
Yes,
The
there's,
park is not nearly as, designed as the operations and maintenance
Just
facility
looking
is.
for opportunities to
there's
have.
some trails and
They have general,
Area.
like a
uncovered shelter.
big picture plan for, what will go there.
And they're planning to put some Gary Oak
Yes,
on the plan.
that's the best place for us to,
Just Gary Up or Gary Up ecosystem?
Not an ecosystem, I think.
not planned to that extent yet. There is a prairie area that I know that we're going to be planting native grasses. But what was included in the packet for that field trip, of the plan for that site is the extent of it. Like, very conceptual still.
Got plenty of ecosystems in Tumwater, they're just all Scotch-brewed.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
All right. I'll be interested to look at that and see how it grows over. I always think of native plants as getting very big, and very like, wispy. They don't,
Well, this will be in the
They're
highly
grown
maintained
and
native,
so
almost native,
it's gonna be kept.
yeah, kept native.
Yeah.
Brent, are you guys doing any education on the urban wood utilization associated with that project?
There'll be some, stories on that, once, the building's officially open. Many, many angles to that.
Nice. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, should we adjourn the meeting?
There is one more item.
Work plan
Oh.
for next year.
Work plan for next year. Oh, that's what that was on the list.
All right.
What do we got?
So this is what I have for you so far. Tanya expressed to me an email that she'd like to have you all brainstorm to, and especially given your comment earlier that you feel that the tree board is underutilized. some opportunity. There's some TBD. There's definitely blank spaces in here for you all to fill in with work that you would like. I have two things that I want to show you to frame that conversation. One is the section of code that establishes you all, which includes your power and duties. So what you suggest to go in that schedule should be within these three things. Otherwise, it's outside of your mission, essentially. Tree board shall advise the city council regarding the development, updating, and facilitation of a plan and implementation strategy for the advancement, conservation, and care of the urban forest in the city. I interpret that as the urban forestry management plan. The tree board will apply its resources to various other related projects and tasks that the city council may identify and request assistance. So that's responsive to the city council asking you to do things. And the last one here is the tree board will provide a vigorous program to educate and outreach property owners and assist them in urban forestry matters. One other thing to help frame the conversation, I think it's this one. Yes. So these are the actions in the urban forestry management plan that are scheduled to be 2025 that have tree board as the primary actor. So I thought this would also be helpful for you to look at. Promote the use of native tree and understory species on public and private property to enhance desired wildlife activity. Consider whether planting of edible landscaping such as berry plants and fruit trees would be appropriate in city parks or open spaces, taking into consideration factors such as public safety, attraction of vermin, disease transmission, and maintenance ability and costs. Work with schools, nurseries, and other public and private landowners to construct tree species test plots, and work with the tree board. You will work with the tree board to develop and prioritize a list of community and urban forest enhancement opportunities and projects citywide. And you all are a primary for here, but you can see there's other secondary and other primaries involved here as well. So one of which is community development for all of these, which they just expressed lack of staff. But for that to be in your mind as you look at this schedule, and I will take notes as to what you would like added in here.
My interpretation of what Tanya wrote was that we be encouraged to think about it between now and January. And then in January, do our brainstorming and then discussion, and then perhaps prioritizing if we can do that all at once. Maybe that would be a January and February process.
How do you feel about this topic for January?
We can move that down too, if you want.
Yes, Tanya, I mean, she's on the road.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good point.
sounds good. It sounds good to me. Yeah. I just thought it would
So
be
that we
good.
don't lose.
Yeah. I just thought it'd be good to have goals and think about things we want to change. I mean, the year flies by and it's like, what did we accomplish? I mean, the oak tree's still here. That's a good thing. But I just think we can do more. Alyssa, when we were talking about the web page, could we do a Facebook page for the Tumwater Tree Board? Would that be a possibility? That maybe,
I can ask.
okay,
I wonder if you can invite a guest from communications if we're gonna tackle that. We just kick it off in January to let us know what's possible or not possible.
maybe that.
One of the things I'd just like to throw out for us to talk about in January is number 2 up there. We're supposed to do what the council asks us to do. I've been here 6 years or more, I don't know. I don't remember the council ever asking us to do anything. I don't know that we have a relationship with the council. Maybe Trent does, but
I think one time they asked us to review the what was it, the like tree protection measure or tree protection
yeah.
code.
And I know they've got full plates, but I wonder if there's some way we can build a relationship with the council. Maybe, it's just saying once a year, Arbor Day month or something. Hey, council, we're here if you need us. We're particularly, the challenge is, I wonder, it's almost as though we can't initiate anything, except number 3 says, well, you know, kind of anything related to trees. You can think about or talk about or what, so, but I don't remember that we've said, you know, city council, message from us, here's the issue of the year, or, you know, here's one of the things. We have no authority to act on this, but do you want us to check this out, to talk about it, to think about it, to whatever, you know? I almost feel like we need to get permission before we spend our time doing something that maybe the council doesn't want us to do. And I guess the Meeker Oak thing is kind of an example of that. It's an issue that came up and the council tried to, you know, talk about it and wrestle with it. And I don't think, don't remember the council saying, tree board, what do you think?
No,
We
they
did have
didn't.
one meeting. And
They didn't, but the council actually was instrumental in getting the second assessment done because city.
assessment, yeah.
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 So,
And so, you know, I just wonder, you know, they've got so many boards and commissions and they're trying to take care of things without creating work for other people. But I don't know if we can build a better relationship with them so that we can be more effective,
I agree.
proactive.
That's a possibility.
And I don't know how we would do that and what the rules would permit us to do.
I could suggest a joint tree board and city council work session where you all could talk about issues that you see, the issues that they see, and see if they can authorize you. They can't formally make decisions, but in a work session, but they can potentially authorize you to work on some things. And that would be especially useful if you developed the work plan of what you would like to accomplish in the following year, and then maybe ask them for
Great.
approval of the work plan.
That'd be great.
I would assume we almost have to. Is that right? We have to get permission to do stuff from them if we say this is what we think we should do.
Other than the items A and C that I read, yes. So if it's in the urban forestry management plan, you could interpret it as yes, you can do that.
Because they've already approved that.
They've approved that, and you can do a vigorous program to educate and outreach property owners.
Not vigorous.
Yes, it has to be vigorous.
Okay, and one more point I hope we can talk about in January, tree board. I think I'd like to change the term tree.
What are you proposing?
Plant, environment. I mean, Alyssa, you're involved in sustainability, huge stuff. And there's boards and commissions I don't have a clue exist that are about stormwater and this and that and noxious weeds and all of that sort of stuff. And tree board was created 50 years ago in Nebraska, or the Arbor Day Committee, right? And it was about trees.
1995, it's a tree board here.
It was about trees, you know? Well, it's not just about trees anymore. And I'm wondering, is there a better term than tree board to describe what we think we should be doing?
Is the term tree board codified in that code?
Yeah. That would have to change.
Well, the one that comes to mind is urban forestry, because that's what our plan is, and as we define our urban forestry plan, it's more comprehensive than just trees, other stories and other habitats, and other services.
I like that. But I don't know if that conflicts with the urban forester and.
I mean, it could be Urban Forestry Advisory Board to clarify that.
Okay, well, think about it.
Developing
Well, it'd be the time to change. I mean, with the
Yeah,
new urban forester that we've been wanting for 20 years.
yeah.
Trying to get for 20 years.
Okay, well, that's,
So I guess maybe even coming to us what the process would be to change.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of things to think about.
The word tree is all over the ordinances and all over our charter and all that sort of stuff, so are we
I like the way you
able,
think, though, being more integrated and comprehensive, more holistic.
and not trying to take over anybody else's job,
No,
but
Never are.
I think the groundwork is made in the urban forestry plan for that very thing. We were very intentional about that.
Look into the process, how to change. I know it would be an amendment to the ordinance. And what level of public input would need to be required to that needs to be defined. If it's just a simple, like, community development does, housekeeping ordinances where they clarify, like on an annual basis, if there's something that's not clear enough, and they realize that through the process, they do housekeeping ordinances, and I don't think that that requires a whole lot of public outreach, but I could be mistaken.
Just a clerical change.
If, I mean,
Oh, they'd
yeah,
have
if,
the whole.
if you wanted to, we would need to redo this whole section of code.
whole H.
Well, look at that.
And every other reference in the wildly complicated draft 1608.
Oh, yeah.
I will be frank that I think that, changing this section of code, that includes your powers and duties, might become a, Pandora's box for all of the other boards to then also consider that. So that would probably be part of the overall decision from leadership, is if we allow if the tree board changes their charter, their name, all of these things, then do we do this with all of the advisory boards, and how much?
That's good.
I'm not against it, but
It's a variable.
we've heard some discontent also with other boards about how they've been allocated resources. And it would very likely, if the tree board did it, lead to at least one other, if not more than one other board taking that on, and it would take staff time to make the changes.
In a catalyst is sometimes a really good thing.
Against it. Just noting that that might be a side effect that is associated with this change.
We don't have anything to lose.
I will look into the process and ask.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, if there is that option for a clerical change, if you could, if the answer to that is yes, if we could best understand what that threshold is for like what is clerical and what has more potential to open Pandora's box, I think that would help us decide whether or not push is worth the pull.
As I recall, in the ordinances, there was a section on tree standards that we changed to vegetation standards or something like that in the draft editing of.
The tree and vegetation protection ordinance. It's been titled that. It's currently titled that, and the draft is also titled that.
I just thought, as we were
Tree and vegetation. as the name.
2 years ago, we were looking at that and saying, it was consistently using the word trees, and we wanted to expand the plant to include other plants.
The current version includes vegetation as well.
Right.
It's not a change in the draft, but there was a concerted effort in the drafting of, I can say draft one more time, I can, to then also have requirements for the removal of vegetation, because we had prescriptive, you can do this with trees, and vegetation was in the title, but there wasn't really, you can do this or you can't do this with vegetation as well. So adding some of those, and a lot of that was for those areas that are retained, and prioritizing areas that have understory and canopy in place, and prioritizing keeping those as opposed to putting that somewhere else and planting
We
it.
don't want them to scrape the shrubs away and leave the trees. We want them to leave everything.
I remember that conversation.
And that is reflected in the draft, that like 100-page draft that you all haven't seen, but I've read many times.
Thank you.
I feel very confident about where it's going. It just apparently needs an extra push to get over the hurdle, and it is a contentious topic, especially considering the meeker oak issue as well. Trees are touchy. it's not that we're delaying it because of that whatsoever, but that we want to make sure that it's allocated enough time in case it does turn out to be, more controversial than we expect it to. We expect people to be pleased, but
So I think your suggestion of the Urban Forestry Advisory Board does convey really well what this is.
Good to hear from a fresh set of eyes. Ears?
I've not done this particular kind of change before, of changing the name of the board, so we'll see. Here,
We have 20% of your time, you got.
yeah, that's true.
I think we're done with that.
All right.
So just to clarify, I want to make sure that I'm clear. So for the January agenda, do you want the communications person to come and for that to be the beginning of the conversation, or would you like to brainstorm on this first and then maybe bring the communications person in February? Or both? I imagine that the brainstorming could easily take the 2 hours of the meeting.
I feel that brainstorming could stand alone. There could be a month or a part of a future month that's dedicated to a communication strategy coming out of the board, and I think that one would be the most appropriate to have someone else come to.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
So January will be brainstorm on the work plan. That's the agenda item.
You have, city,
3 web pages. I can move that to be in association with when the communications guest. This is a draft. This is subject to change. This is my best guess. The TBD stuff had the code, and then I found out last week that we weren't going to be working on the code in 2025, so there we go.
so there isn't a reason that we need to do that in January.
Nope, the only ones that we do need to have the conversations about Arbor Day in those months prior to Arbor Day. This is when I think the urban forester would have at least a month of work under their belt so that they would feel comfortable coming to talk to you all. Summer field trip, we've had 2 years of not having a quorum, so perhaps part of the conversation with brainstorming is this still something you all want to do? Is September or August the wrong month? And then we generally have the urban forestry management plan implementation update in November or December, but that can move too. Everything is fluid on here. It's except for the Arbor Day stuff.
There's one thing, we talked about last year, and that is the required annual election, which I think is supposed to be in March or something like that, I think.
I don't think
We
there's,
all have our terms, there's a term limit, change on.
Term limit, Mike.
I know.
I'll put the elections in there.
Like decade here.
Something that's come to my awareness also is that the tree board, I don't think, unless it's in a paper format somewhere that I've just never seen, tree board never created bylaws for yourself. Some of the city's advisory boards have them, some do not. For instance, the March annual elections, that's based off the bylaws of the Planning Commission that I've just copied over in my brain to put them on the schedule. If you all want to work on bylaws, that is a heavy administrative lift, and you all can do it. I believe in you.
Nice.
Put that into your work plan. But if that's something you all desire, just flagging that you all don't seem to have them unless they're in a,
Sounds like we haven't needed them until up to now. Brent, have we needed them?
I think so.
That's not create work.
Right.
Does not relate specifically to tree preservation conservation.
If we're gonna spend a lot of time on something, it should be something that's more fruitful, I think. Or, doesn't seem like it's necessary that we have. quick
When
bylaws.
it started, the board was only supposed to be 2 professionals.
yes, and now it's 6.
What, it is?
Yeah.
Tanya's our only really citizen.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it was supposed to be 2 professionals and then citizens.
Oh, you mean there should be more citizens?
Well, I
On
would
the
think,
board.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, just like Dana, what she said
Is that in writing somewhere?
It is in here,
so.
yeah.
at the very beginning.
So we do have bylaws.
You have the
To the board,
code that, yeah.
but it went along where, heck, we only had 2 or 3 anyway,
Right.
period.
hard to get a quorum in there for a while.
Yeah.
So
Tree
Trent
board
came,
shall
always get a quorum with Trent.
Yep, there's two sections that speak to this. One is the created. There is hereby created a tree board for the city, which will consist of, from 5 to 7 members as provided in TMC 2.66.020. Members of the Tumwater Tree Board shall be appointed by the mayor and approved by city council and shall be residents of the city except as provided in TMC 2.66.020. Provided, however, at any given time, one person may qualify for membership by residing in the city's urban growth area as an alternative to actual city residency. And then 2.66.020B, the tree board shall always include at least 2 professionals who have experience in identifying, evaluating, and protecting trees and vegetation and are selected from among the disciplines of urban forestry, landscaping, forest management, and landscape architecture. Any tree board action that would otherwise be valid shall not be rendered invalid by the temporary vacancy of one or more of the professional positions. Exception of the residency requirement may be granted by the mayor and city council in order to obtain 2 professional representatives from the above-mentioned disciplines,
It says at least.
at least.
And I don't meet that qualification, so I'm a citizen here.
And I'm retired. I'm no
He
longer,
definitely does.
I'm no longer a professional.
I think we're good.
Sounds balanced to me.
Thank you.
Says anything. What the heck?
Well, and theoretically, we could have one more person too, right?
Up to 7. You have 7 now.
Oh, we had, oh, right, yeah. I was thinking we only had 6, but you had John. So-
You have consistently kept 7 the entire time I've been employed in Tumwater.
Really
Well,
a
that's just
testament
because
to
of
your.
I don't know. My beautiful packets, isn't it? No. So I'm hearing and don't want to work on bylaws, is that right?
Right.
Right. Or maybe we have an anonymous survey at some point?
There's not been a motion.
Okay.
Hearing none.
Man, that'd take all year.
There could be a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Meeting adjourned.
Sorry, Trent.
What happened
Oh,
to
that's
these stipends we were getting, Alyssa?
Compensation, yeah.
How long have you?
2 years.
2 years.
There is an effort. Thank you, Tanya.
Yep, thank you.
Um,